She woke up in a stranger's penthouse, wearing nothing but his shirt. She didn't know his name, didn't know what happened last night, until he walked in, cold eyes locking on hers, and said, "I'm Ryan Walker, and you're in my place." From that moment, her life spun into a storm of passion, betrayal, and a love she never saw coming. But how did a single night lead to a story that would change everything? Call to action. If you're hooked by Emily and Ryan's journey, hit that subscribe button right now so you never miss the next chapter. Tell me in the comments, would you walk away or stay and see where this story leads? And don't forget to share this video with someone who loves dramatic love stories as much as you do. Emily Carter's eyes snapped open. The ceiling above her wasn't familiar. No peeling paint, no dusty fan. Instead, smooth concrete and hidden strip lights glowed softly. Her pulse jumped as she sat upright, scanning the room. Black leather chairs, a glass table, a massive window spilling sunlight over a skyline she didn't recognize. Then she looked down and froze. She was wearing nothing but a man's white dress shirt, bare legs, bare feet on the cold wood floor. Her breath hitched. Emily shoved the blanket aside and stumbled off the bed, heart hammering. Where were her clothes? She darted to the nightstand. No phone. She dropped to her knees, pulling open drawers, empty. Her purse was on the floor, zipper half open, lipstick rolling out. Her gaze caught on the corner of the room. A dark, crumpled shape sat in the trash can. She stepped closer, dread crawling up her spine. Her emerald green dress, the one she'd worn last night, was there, twisted and soaked, reeking of alcohol and something acrid that made her gag. She gripped the edge of the trash can, knuckles white, mind racing. What happened? Flashes hit her like lightning, music pounding in a crowded bar, clinking glasses, a stranger's hand brushing her shoulder. Then nothing, a blank. Her voice trembled in the silence. "Damn it! What did I do?" Her chest tightened. She spun back to the bed, searching again, tossing pillows aside, desperate to find her phone, her bag, anything. Her breathing grew shallow, panic clawing at her ribs. Then, a sharp click at the door. Emily froze. The door swung open. A tall man stepped inside, framed by the hallway light. He moved with a calm, deliberate stride, a steaming cup of coffee in his hand. His dark hair was slicked back, his suit jacket slung casually over one shoulder, icy blue eyes locking onto her like he'd been expecting this moment. Emily stumbled back, clutching the shirt's hem with shaking hands. Who are you? Where am I?" Her voice cracked, too loud in the quiet room. The man didn't flinch. He set the coffee on the glass table with slow precision, his gaze unwavering, his expression unreadable. Controlled, cold, almost amused. "You're awake," he said, his deep voice steady, cutting through the chaos in her mind like a blade. Emily's heart pounded so hard it hurt. The questions burned in her throat, but her mind kept repeating one thing. She had no idea whose bed she'd just woken up in, and why he was looking at her like that. Emily's breath came fast as she yanked the blanket off the bed and wrapped it tightly around herself, clutching the edges like it was her only armor. Her voice cracked, half demand, half plea. "Who are you? Where am I?" Ryan didn't even blink. He slid the coffee mug onto the glass table with a quiet clink, folded his arms, and leaned against the edge as if he owned not just the room, but the entire moment. His tone was steady, measured, each word deliberate. "I'm Ryan Walker, and this is my place. Last night, you were drunk out of your mind. Some guys thought they could take you. I stepped in." Emily's heart hammered. The name hit her like a jolt. Ryan Walker. She knew it. Everyone in fashion knew it. But the thought barely settled before a new wave of humiliation crashed over her. Her grip on the blanket tightened, her voice trembling with disbelief and rising anger. You changed my clothes?" Ryan's gaze didn't flicker. His answer came flat, without apology. "You threw up all over your dress and your coat. You want me to leave you in that mess?" The words stabbed straight through her daze. Emily's face burned, heat flooding her cheeks. A dozen emotions collided. Shame, fury, gratitude she didn't want to feel. She turned away, teeth clenched, blinking back the sting in her eyes. She wanted to snap at him, wanted to bolt out the door, but her legs stayed locked in place. Ryan watched her quietly. No sign of mockery, no pity either. That calm presence only twisted the knot in her chest tighter. Her voice broke as she tried again, lower this time. "You should have called someone. You didn't have to." He cut in, sharp and cool. "Who? You didn't answer when I asked for your address. You laughed, said New York was beautiful. You couldn't even stand." Emily flinched, the memory hitting her like a flash. Blurred lights, hands grabbing at her. Her own voice slurring nonsense. Her nails dug into the blanket as she whispered, almost to herself, "God." Her knees trembled under the weight of it all. She wanted to hate him for seeing her like that, for stripping away her control. But behind the ice in his tone, she caught something else, a simple fact. He'd kept her safe when she couldn't do it herself. The silence stretched. Ryan straightened, pushing off the table. His blue eyes pinned her in place. "I didn't do it for thanks," he said quietly. "Just try not to drink like that again." Emily's lips parted, but no words came. She looked down at her bare feet, peeking from under the blanket, her chest tight. A part of her wanted to run. Another part, against her will, wanted to know why his calm, commanding presence made her heart race harder than the fear itself. And just like that, the line was drawn. She didn't know what came next, but standing there in his penthouse, she felt it deep in her gut. This was only the start of something far bigger than a one-night mistake. The next morning, Emily stood in front of the mirror in her tiny Manhattan studio, her hands shaking as she adjusted the collar of her navy blouse. Dark circles framed her eyes, but she forced herself to breathe, forced her trembling fingers to smooth her skirt. Today was her first day at Walker Atelier, the kind of company designers dreamed of, the kind of opportunity she'd uprooted her life for. She grabbed her portfolio, squared her shoulders, and whispered to herself like a mantra, "Forget last night. Focus on the job. That's all that matters." The elevator ride up to the towering glass building was a blur. She clutched her bag so tight her knuckles went white, her pulse quickening as she stepped into the sleek lobby, buzzing with staff in sharp suits. This was the future she wanted. This was her fresh start. On the 14th floor, a young assistant led her down a hallway lined with fashion sketches and framed magazine covers. Emily's heart raced faster with every step. The assistant opened the door to a large conference room where other new designers were settling in, setting up laptops, shuffling papers. Emily took a seat at the far end of the table, trying to steady her breathing. She laid out her sketches, her hands brushing the smooth paper like it was a lifeline. Around her, the chatter died down as a meeting announcement flashed on the screen. She adjusted her pen and told herself again, "Just focus. No one knows what happened last night." Then the door opened, footsteps, slow, measured, confident. Emily didn't look up at first, until she caught a flicker of movement in her peripheral vision. She froze. Her grip on the pen tightened. The man stepping into the room was tall, sharp-suited, with dark hair slicked back and icy blue eyes scanning the room. His presence shifted the air like a sudden drop in temperature. Ryan Walker. Emily's stomach dropped. Her pulse thundered in her ears. No, 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 no. She fumbled her pen. It slipped from her fingers, clattering against the table. Everyone turned for a split second, but Emily barely noticed. Her mind was reeling, a tornado of disbelief and panic. Ryan strode to the head of the table, calm and commanding. He set down a folder, buttoned his jacket, and swept the room with his gaze. When his eyes landed on her, they lingered. He knows. Her heart stuttered. She felt heat rise to her cheeks, the memory of that oversized white shirt, and his piercing stare from last night crashing back with brutal clarity. Ryan's lips curved. Not a full smile, just the faintest smirk that felt like a private message only she could read. "Well," he said, voice smooth and steady, filling the room. "Looks like we meet again." Emily's breath hitched. Around her, the other designers glanced at each other, confused, whispering under their breath. No one else understood the weight in his words. No one else could feel the tension pulling tight between them, like a live wire. She straightened in her chair, fingers trembling under the table. She told herself not to react, not to let the shock show, but her heart was pounding so hard she thought everyone could hear it. Ryan's gaze held hers for one unbearable second longer before he turned back to the room, his tone shifting back to business. "I'm Ryan Walker, CEO of Walker Atelier. I expect bold ideas, no excuses. Let's see what you've got." Emily forced herself to breathe, gripping her portfolio like a lifeline. Her thoughts spun out of control. Of all people, my boss? The man who saw me at my worst? She swallowed hard, fighting the urge to run. There was no escape. She was in his world now, and every beat of her heart screamed the truth. This just got a lot more complicated. The room buzzed with introductions, but Emily barely heard them. All she felt was his presence at the front, the memory of last night, and the terrifying thrill of knowing her carefully planned new life had just collided head-on with the man who already held a secret piece of her she could never take back. And as she sat, frozen in her chair, one thought echoed louder than the rest. How in the world was she going to survive this? The conference room smelled faintly of paper and fresh ink as Emily stood, straightened her shoulders, and pushed her sketches toward the center of the long table. Her palms were damp, but her voice came out clear, strong. "My concept is called New York Rising, a collection that blends bold street energy with high-end couture. Sharp lines, unexpected textures, colors that hit like city lights at midnight." Slides clicked forward on the screen. Models in asymmetrical jackets, skirts with raw hems, and daring accessories flashed before the team. Emily pointed to details, her tone quick, confident. For a moment, she forgot the penthouse, forgot the shirt, forgot Ryan's piercing gaze from last night. Then his voice cut through the room. 3 months. He didn't look up from her sketches. "Are you saying you can deliver all of this in 3 months?" The air thickened. A few designers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Emily felt her heart skip, but forced herself to hold his stare. "I finished a similar project in 2 months back in Chicago," she replied, voice sharper now. "I'll prove to you I can do it again." For the first time, Ryan's expression shifted. His lips curved into that faint smirk that always felt too personal. He leaned back in his chair, watching her like he was testing not just her idea, but her resolve. "We'll see." Emily exhaled slowly, fingers brushing her pen. Then it slipped from her grip, rolled across the polished wood, and dropped to the floor with a loud clack. Heat shot through her cheeks as she reached down, but Ryan was already there. He bent smoothly, picked it up, and placed it in her hand without breaking eye contact. "You really do drop things a lot," he murmured, just low enough that only she could hear. Her breath caught, a flush crawling up her neck. She snapped the pen back onto her notes, determined not to let him see her flustered. "Thanks," she whispered, forcing her gaze back to her sketches. Hours later, the meeting ended with murmurs of approval. Emily stayed behind, collecting her materials, hiding her trembling hands. She could feel his presence even as he stepped out of the room, and her heart wouldn't stop pounding. That night, the design studio was almost empty. The hum of sewing machines had faded. Only the city lights beyond the windows kept the darkness at bay. Emily hunched over her desk, tracing lines on fabric swatches, her hair falling loose around her face. She refused to waste a second. A door clicked open. She froze. Footsteps approached, steady, unhurried. A warm, rich scent of coffee filled the air. Ryan appeared at her side, holding 2 cups. He set one down gently on her cluttered table. "You're still here," he said, his tone low, calm, but his eyes flicked over her sketches with something softer than before. Emily looked up, startled. "I needed to fix some proportions," she muttered, brushing a stray curl from her face. Ryan didn't reply right away. He simply watched her, his hands sliding into his pockets as if he had nowhere else to be. The silence between them was strange, not uncomfortable, but charged, alive. She took a sip of the coffee. It was strong, exactly how she liked it. "Thank you," she said quietly. Ryan nodded once, his expression unreadable, then turned and left as silently as he had arrived. Emily sat back in her chair, staring at the door long after he disappeared. Her heart was still racing, but not from fear this time. It was something else, something she didn't want to name yet. Night after night, This pattern continued. Emily worked late, pouring herself into New York Rising, refusing to fail. And almost every night, Ryan showed up, sometimes with coffee, sometimes with only a glance through the glass walls before leaving again. Each brief moment carried something unspoken. Each glance made her chest tighten in a way that terrified her. And each night, alone with her sketches, Emily whispered to herself, "Stay focused, don't get distracted." But deep down, she already knew. This wasn't just about the designs anymore. Something bigger was rising, and it wasn't just in her career. It was the feeling she couldn't stop, the one that hit harder every time those blue eyes found hers. The next morning started like any other. Emily buried herself in sketches, blocking out the world beyond her desk. Her focus was sharp, her heart steady, until the elevator doors opened and a voice she never thought she'd hear again cut through the studio noise. "Emily." Her pencil froze mid-line. That voice, too familiar, too unwelcome. She turned slowly, every muscle tight. And there he was, Ethan Scott, the man who shattered her heart in Chicago, the man whose betrayal had driven her to start over in New York. "Emily, I've been looking for you," Ethan said, striding past startled assistants, his eyes locked on her. "I know I don't deserve a second of your time, but I need to talk." Emily stood, pulse pounding in her ears. "This isn't the place," she hissed, glancing around as coworkers whispered. But Ethan didn't stop. He moved closer, his voice breaking just enough to make the moment raw. "Emily, I was an idiot. I ruined us. Please, let me fix it." Her chest tightened, old wounds twisting open, but her jaw hardened. She took a step back, shaking her head. "No, Ethan, you don't get to walk in here and—" Before she could finish, Ethan reached for her hand. "I'm not leaving until you hear me out." Emily jerked her hand away, but he caught it again, gripping too tight, desperation in his eyes. Around them, a silence rippled through the studio. Every designer nearby stopped, eyes darting between them. High above, behind the glass railing of the mezzanine, Ryan Walker had been reviewing fabric samples with a department head. He heard the commotion, glanced over, and froze. From his vantage point, he saw Ethan's hand wrapped around Emily's. He saw her lips moving, but not the defiance in her tone, not the anger blazing in her eyes. What Ryan saw was something else entirely. His lead designer, the woman who had invaded his thoughts night after night, standing close to another man, and not pulling away. His expression darkened, blue eyes narrowing, jaw tight. A storm brewed behind his calm facade. Down on the floor, Emily ripped her hand free and snapped, loud enough for half the room to hear. "We're done, Ethan. Do you hear me? We've been done." Ethan's face fell. He reached out again, but she shoved his arm away this time, fury breaking through her composure. "Get out. Don't ever show up here again." Security moved in, finally catching on. But Ethan hesitated, whispering, "I still love you," before turning toward the elevator. Emily's breath came fast, adrenaline crashing through her. Her hands trembled as she pressed them to her face, trying to collect herself under the weight of dozens of stairs. Upstairs, Ryan said nothing. He turned from the railing, walked back into his office, and shut the door with a soft click. He didn't come down. He didn't ask questions. That evening, Emily stayed late as always, pushing herself deeper into the sketches for New York Rising. She kept glancing at the door, expecting Ryan to appear like he always did, coffee in hand, that unreadable calm in his eyes. But the door stayed closed. The clock ticked. The hum of the city outside was the only sound. The next morning, her inbox pinged with a new message. No greeting, no hint of the man who had quietly supported her for weeks. Just one line. "Update me on the progress when you can, Ryan Walker." Emily stared at the screen, her stomach twisting. He'd never emailed her like this before. No late-night visits, no small smiles, just sterile words. She wanted to explain, to tell him exactly what had happened. But how? He wasn't coming around anymore. He wasn't giving her the chance. Emily set the phone down, pressed her palms to her eyes, and whispered to herself, "Don't let this break you." But as she returned to her sketches, her mind refused to focus. The memory of Ethan's hand grabbing hers burned like a brand. And somewhere in the back of her mind, Ryan's cold blue eyes haunted her, a silent accusation she couldn't escape. For the first time since arriving in New York, Emily felt the ground beneath her shift, like the world she was building might crumble. And this time, it wasn't just her career at stake. The night before the biggest presentation of her career, Emily sat alone in her apartment, staring at her sketches but seeing nothing. The hum of traffic outside blurred into a low roar, and Ryan's cold email replayed in her head over and over. Days of silence, no late-night coffee, no quiet encouragement, nothing but distance. Her chest ached with frustration, and something deeper she could no longer deny. Finally, she shoved her pencil aside, grabbed her coat, and bolted out the door. The sky over Manhattan was black, rain pouring in sheets that soaked her within seconds. She didn't stop. She pushed through puddles, her heels splashing on slick sidewalks, taxi horns blaring in the distance. Her breath came in short gasps, hair plastered to her face as she reached the familiar building. Emily stood outside the penthouse entrance, rain dripping off her coat, her pulse hammering. She jabbed the buzzer with a trembling finger. "Please answer, please." A moment later, the lock clicked and the door swung open. Ryan filled the doorway, still in his shirt sleeves, his dark hair slightly disheveled. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. Then his voice cut through the sound of rain, deep and cold. "You should go back to him." Emily's heart clenched. Her voice broke, but her anger rose just as fast. "What?" she shouted over the downpour. "You think I'd come here if I wanted him? I told him no. I told him we were over." Ryan's expression stayed unreadable. His blue eyes narrowed, but Emily saw something flicker. Hurt, jealousy, before he turned away. That was it. That look ignited her fury. She stepped forward, water pooling on the polished floor beneath her. "You are unbelievable. You think you know everything, but you never asked me, did you? You just assumed." Ryan's jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. The rain beat harder against the windows. Emily's chest heaved as she stood there, dripping, shaking from more than the cold. "You're wrong," she cried, voice breaking. "I don't want my past. I don't want him. Her foot slipped on the slick floor. She gasped as her balance gave way, but strong arms caught her before she could hit the ground. Ryan pulled her against him, steadying her, his grip firm and warm despite the chill in the air. Their faces were inches apart, their breaths mingling. Emily stared up at him, water streaming down her cheeks, unsure if they were raindrops or tears. Her voice came out in a trembling whisper, raw and desperate. "I like you, Ryan. More than I've wanted to admit. Please, stop pushing me away." Time froze. The rain faded to a distant hum. Ryan's eyes searched hers, all the walls he'd built suddenly visible, fragile, ready to crack. 1 second, 2, then something shifted. He exhaled sharply, almost a laugh, and pulled her closer, his voice low, rough with emotion. "You drive me insane, Emily Carter." Before she could respond, his arms wrapped around her, holding her like he'd never let go. The scent of rain and coffee and something uniquely him enveloped her. And then, in the quiet storm of the penthouse, Ryan tilted her chin up and kissed her, slow at first, then with an intensity that sent a shiver down her spine. She gripped his shoulders, returning the kiss, the blanket of tension breaking apart into something electric, alive. Outside, rain hammered the city. Inside, time no longer mattered. For the first time since that chaotic night, Emily felt steady, safe, exactly where she was meant to be. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Ryan rested his forehead against hers, his voice barely above a whisper. "Don't ever scare me like that again." Emily laughed through a tear, her heart pounding against his chest. "Then don't ever shut me out." And in that moment, soaked, shaking, and tangled in each other's arms, they both knew the truth. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The runway lights blazed like a constellation as the first model stepped out in Emily's creation. Cameras flashed. The crowd murmured, then gasped, then broke into cheers. One after another, the pieces from New York Rising swept down the runway. Structured jackets with daring slits, skirts layered with unexpected textures, accessories that shimmered like Manhattan at midnight. Emily stood just off stage, clutching the edge of the curtain, her heart pounding as if it might burst. Every step those models took was a step she had fought for through sleepless nights, through doubts, through that rain-soaked confrontation that had changed everything. When the final look appeared, a bold, asymmetrical gown woven with metallic threads, the audience rose. Reporters leaned forward, snapping photos as applause thundered through the hall. Someone shouted her name. She froze for half a beat, eyes stinging, before stepping onto the stage. Bright lights hit her face. Emily blinked against the glare, forcing herself to walk tall. The applause grew louder. She saw the crowd, editors, investors, buyers, on their feet. But her eyes searched for only one person, and there he was. Ryan Walker, standing at the edge of the stage, his suit impeccable, his blue eyes locked on her. For the first time in weeks, she saw no distance, no cold detachment, only pride, pure and unguarded. Emily took the mic, voice shaking but steady enough. "Thank you for believing in me, for believing in what this city can inspire." She turned her head, meeting Ryan's eyes. He gave the smallest nod, and her chest tightened with a rush of emotion she barely held back. The show ended in a blur of handshakes, photographs, and flashing bulbs. Strangers pressed business cards into her hand. PR agents gushed over the media buzz. Yet, through it all, her mind stayed fixed on Ryan, who stood nearby, watching her quietly, as though he was giving her space to shine. Later, after the crowd thinned and the hall emptied, Ryan found her by the backstage door. He didn't say a word, just took her hand and led her through the quiet corridors to the rooftop balcony above the venue. The night air was crisp. The city stretched out below, a sea of lights and motion. Emily stepped to the railing, her hair still pinned up from the show, her heart still racing. Ryan stood beside her, silent for a long moment, his hands resting on the cold steel edge. Finally, he spoke, his voice low, almost hesitant. "Emily." She turned, her breath catching. He met her gaze, every wall gone, every layer of his usual control stripped away. "I'm not good with fancy speeches. I don't have the right words." He paused, eyes burning into hers. "But I know this. I love you." Emily's heart slammed against her ribs. For a second, she couldn't move. Then a smile broke through, slow and radiant, as she reached for his hand. Her fingers tightened around his, grounding them both. "I love you too," she said softly, the words trembling with truth. Ryan let out a breath, a laugh mixed with relief and disbelief, and pulled her closer. Emily leaned into him, feeling the warmth of his arms, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Below them, New York glittered, alive, restless, endless. Above them, the night wind carried away the months of doubt and hesitation. Here, on this balcony, everything else faded. Emily closed her eyes, letting the sound of the city wrap around her. She felt his lips brush her hair, felt the strength of his hold, and knew deep in her chest that this wasn't just a career milestone or a fleeting spark. It was the beginning of something lasting, something worth every sleepless night, something she would fight for, just like she had fought for New York Rising. And as they stood together under the lights, two souls, bound by ambition and love, Emily felt the truth settle into her bones. They hadn't just built a collection. They had built something far rarer, a future. Morning sunlight spilled across the penthouse floor, warm and golden, painting the room with a soft glow. Emily stirred, blinking awake as a cool breeze drifted through the slightly open window. For a split second, disorientation hit her, the same kind that had gripped her that first morning months ago. But then she felt it. The familiar softness of a crisp white shirt draped over her shoulders, the faint scent of Ryan's cologne still lingering in the fabric. She sat up slowly, brushing loose strands of hair from her face. This time there was no panic, no rush of shame or confusion. Instead, a calm joy bloomed in her chest. She glanced around and smiled. The once sterile penthouse now carried traces of her everywhere. Sketches pinned to a corkboard by the window, bolts of fabric stacked neatly in the corner, a mannequin draped in the beginnings of a new design. The door opened with a soft creak. Ryan appeared, carrying 2 steaming mugs of coffee. His sleeves were rolled to his forearms, his dark hair slightly tousled, and that subtle smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Wearing my shirt again?" he teased, setting a mug on the nightstand. Emily laughed, pulling the shirt tighter around herself. "It suits me, don't you think?" He raised an eyebrow, leaning against the doorframe, watching her with a quiet intensity that made her heart skip. "It looks better on you anyway." She swung her legs off the bed and crossed the room, bare feet padding softly on the wood. He handed her the second mug, their fingers brushing briefly, sending a familiar rush through her. Emily took a sip, the coffee strong and perfect, and turned toward the window. Together they stood there, side by side, gazing out at the city below. The skyline stretched endlessly, sunlight bouncing off glass towers, taxis already darting through busy intersections far below. New York hummed with life, unstoppable, unpredictable, just like their story. Emily set her mug down, resting her hand lightly on the railing as memories flickered through her mind. That terrifying first morning, the tense confrontations, the nights she spent sketching alone until Ryan appeared with coffee and silent encouragement. The rain-soaked confession that had stripped away every wall between them. Ryan slid an arm around her waist, pulling her closer. His voice dropped to a soft murmur against her hair. "You've changed this place. And me." Emily tilted her head, meeting his gaze. "You've changed me too. I didn't think I could have this. Not after everything." He kissed her forehead gently, his thumb brushing against her hand. "We're just getting started." She smiled, leaning into him, her heart swelling with a mix of pride, gratitude, and a fierce determination to keep building not just collections, but a life that felt entirely her own. As they stood together in the morning light, Emily thought of the journey ahead. New designs, new challenges, a future neither of them could predict, but both were ready to face. She reached for his hand, threading her fingers through his, and whispered with a grin, "Let's make today count." Ryan squeezed her hand, that rare, genuine smile spreading across his face, always. And so, in that penthouse, high above the city, with coffee in their hands and dreams in their hearts, Emily and Ryan took in the view. Not as strangers caught in a storm, but as partners, lovers, and co-creators of something far greater than either of them had imagined. It wasn't the end of their story. It was only the beautiful beginning. Life often surprises us in ways we never expect. Emily's journey reminds us that starting over after heartbreak is not a sign of weakness. It's proof of courage. Sometimes, the most powerful opportunities appear when we're willing to step out of our comfort zone and face uncertainty head-on. Her story also shows that letting someone in, even after you've been hurt, can open doors to trust, love, and growth you never imagined. In our own lives, we can learn to stand tall after mistakes, pursue what we believe in, and allow ourselves a second chance at both career and love. What lesson from Emily's story resonates with you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss another inspiring story that just might change the way you see your own life.